So by tomorrow, Jimmy Butler will be returning from his 7-game suspension for multiple instances of conduct detrimental to the team. This was after he said that he couldn't find joy on the court with Miami anymore and wanted to be traded. The story's pretty well told at this point. At the end of last season, Butler, who was hurt for the playoffs, has said that the Celtics and Knicks would be at home if he had played. Pat Riley heard about that and told the press that Jimmy needs to keep his mouth shut, especially if he's not playing. That frustration from Riley was part of a bigger problem, Butler's next contract. Riley had been hesitant to give Butler a max extension, in large part due to Butler not being available for the entire regular season and the fact that he's now 35 years old. So with Butler wanting out, there's been a lot of interest from teams like the Rockets and Suns, which then leads to the biggest question. Is Jimmy Butler really worth it? Is he actually the same player that we've known for the past few seasons? Let's start with Butler's most recent press conference. Before he talks about not having joy, he was asked about his role in the offense.
When you say what your job is now, we're sort of not used to see you standing in the corner for extended periods like that. Is that a change in the team approach that has cast you that way? And for you to be your best version of yourself, can that be your role and you thrive to the best of your ability?
It can be my role here. But I mean, that's not what I'm used to being. I haven't been that since, my first, second, third year in the league.
Now, from his comments, it sounds like he thinks that the Heat are slowly phasing him out of the offense, which has resorted to him standing in the corner and primarily playing defense. It's true that his usage rate is down to 21%, which is the lowest it's been since 2013, but I'm not sure he has that much to complain about. Part of the reason his usage rate is down is that Tyler Hero is Miami's most reliable scorer. He's primarily handling the ball, but he's done well this year as he continues to look for his shot and is making defenses pay. That has come at Butler's expense as he's typically in the corner standing. But even when Butler has opportunities to score, he's choosing to be passive. Here the Heat run a play for Butler to cut into the paint. He has position, but he doesn't seal his guy and instead goes to the corner. Then in the second, the Heat run a pin down for Butler, but he picks up his dribble instantly and then has Highsmith try to make a play instead. This was his last game before the suspension. He shot the ball only 6 times, but there were definitely opportunities for him to be more aggressive. Now it's fair to say that it's because he doesn't want to be in Miami, so he's not trying on the court. But even before he really wanted out, he was still only averaging 11 to 12 shots per game this season, which is also his lowest since 2013. And honestly, it's a lot of the same. Even when there are opportunities to shoot, Butler has been choosing to defer instead. This has been part of a 3-year trend starting in 2023 when the Heat were the 8th seed but made an incredible run to the finals. No one really talked about it then because he turned it on in the playoffs, but after a bad 2024 and so far 2025 season for the Heat, with Butler's usage rate continuing to drop, the real question remains, can Butler turn it back on when he really wants to? No one will know for sure, but I wanted to highlight a noticeable trend. When Butler first started to coast in 2023, he actually had one of his best seasons from an efficiency standpoint. At that time, he was really known as an elite rim finisher, but he shot the mid-range at 46% that season, which was by far the highest of his career. That translated really well in the playoffs because teams were often dropping in the pick and roll, so he could just step into these jumpers. If they decided to switch a big man onto him, he would pull them out and again had a ton of space to just fire. That allowed him to hit 48% of his mid-range jumpers, and it got to the point where teams really had to respect his shot. The other reason for his great efficiency was his ability to manipulate defenders. His most relied upon move is his pump fake to get defenders jumping, which then allows him to create fouls. Because his pump fake and shot looked really similar, defenders had to react a little slower than normal, which gave Butler better looks at the rim. It's also important to note that Tyler Hero missed the entire 2023 postseason, which gave Butler the green light to shoot as he wished. For most of his career though, Butler's been an average mid-range shooter, hovering around the 40% mark. But starting in the 2024 regular season, Jimmy Butler saw even more noticeable slips in the mid-range as he shot only 35% on mid-range shots and specifically 38% on pull-up mid-range shots, which is what he lived on in the playoffs. Those numbers are pretty similar in 2025 as well. The thing is that not much has really changed. Teams are still playing drop coverage on him because they respect his drive, so he's going to get the mid-range mostly whenever he wants. Butler's still finding the shots he wants, but his jump shot does look a little flat at times. He's been mostly short on these mid-range jumpers, so there's a chance that he's just not getting enough lift, But overall, there's reason to believe that his mid-range could get back up because defenses haven't really changed their approach on him. The bigger problem that I'm concerned about is the lack of rim pressure. If there's not a wide open lane to the basket or a relatively open shot, Butler looks to pass it. I don't mind the fact that he passes, but it's the fact that he's not putting enough pressure on the defense to create any real reaction. With any sort of resistance, that's enough to deter him from being impactful with the ball in his hands. But then on other nights, Butler will look like his old self, slashing through defenders on his way to the rim, and he's still so big, so he has the ability to just power through the defender. And that's when it becomes really hard to evaluate him. Because Butler didn't play in the postseason, we didn't really get to see if his regular season decline was for real. But here's what we do know. If we're going off his whole career, those 2022 and 2023 playoff runs were more anomalies than the norm. Besides those 2 seasons, Butler has never shot the ball over 16 times a game, besides 2 stints with the Bulls in 15 and 17. A big reason why he was shooting so much in 2022 and 2023 was that Miami was really lacking shot creators, specifically Tyler Hero for a big stretch. So, without a real secondary offensive player then, the Heat really needed Butler to carry their offense, which led to much more time with the ball and hence a higher usage rate. But back in 2020, when the Heat had Goran Dragic and Tyler Hero as playmakers and made the finals as well, Butler only averaged 14 shots in the playoffs, but was still a really impactful player. He really made his mark on the defensive end by playing the passing lanes and getting his points in transition. In the half court, even though he was off the ball, he cut a ton to keep defenses honest. He's great at reading his defender, knowing when they're not looking so he can cut right behind them for layups. He even sets screens to the pick and roll, and it's his positioning that helps him find layups in traffic. And yes, I talked a lot about how he's standing in the corner now, but the 2020 playoff version is a role that comes natural to him as long as he wants it, and I think better suits him right now. Which is why it's disappointing and confusing that he didn't want to go to Memphis, a team that predicates most of their offense on positioning and choosing when to move into space. If we look at the teams he really wants to go to, a lot of them already have great ball handlers, but their off-ball players are mostly standing to give their stars room to attack. What they really need is someone that can put pressure on the defense without standing in the corner. And throughout most of Butler's career, that's the guy he's really been. He can be the main playmaker, but he's mostly been a player that plays within the flow of the offense. He'll look for his shots at times, but he cares more about making an all-around impact than just as an offensive playmaker. Most teams that want him need him to make a real push in the regular season. So, if they're looking for the playoff Jimmy, I'm hesitant to believe that he will be that guy again. Even if he's shooting the ball better, it's not in his nature to want to shoot 20 times a game, especially when there's other shot makers around him. Keep in mind that he's also 35 years old and has dealt with a good amount of injuries in his career. The reality is, Butler brings a lot of risk and uncertainty. No one really knows what to expect from him. No one knows if his numbers are because of his desire or a true decline. And unfortunately for teams that really want him, they need to get him to really find out what they're really getting themselves into.